Hello, film studies class. This will be the second to last film that we watch. This is going to be a brief video going along with the PowerPoint for Jackie Brown. So just an introduction to that film, which is the last in the trilogy of American films that you'll have to choose from for your final essay assignment. So you've had to write a reflection over The Last Picture Show, Do the Right Thing, and now Jackie Brown. And hopefully those reflections have kind of been perhaps some brainstorming or thinking through how you might approach these films for whatever direction you choose for your final essay. So last week, at the end of last week's intro to Do the Right Thing, I went over the essay assignment, so I won't repeat that, but please go over that. We'll talk about that in class discussion, and let me know if you have any questions at all. There are a couple of different approaches you can take to your final essay. There's some flexibility, some creativity. So after you watch Jackie Brown, you will again choose one of these films to focus your essay on and look through a certain critical theory lens. So we'll talk about that more. If you have individual questions, ideas, you want to brainstorm, you can always reach out and we can talk about topics. And I'm also more than happy, I encourage you to have me look at a first draft, which will of course elevate your final essay grade. The final film that we watch in class, you'll watch this for kind of the week between next week and our finals week, is Me and You and Everyone We Know, which is a modern independent film by Miranda July. It's actually entering the Criterion Collection today. So I'm hoping that over the next couple of weeks, there'll be a new essay and some new kind of commentary on that film that I can show you before we watch it. So we'll discuss that film, but you won't have to write a reflection about it because that's kind of our final week film. So without further ado, let's talk about Jackie Brown. So Jackie Brown is the Tarantino film that we watch in Intro to Film Studies. The reason for this is because as I was planning my film screenings, I thought, you know, it's probably more common that students have watched Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, two of his early, really well-known, kind of iconic films. And what Jackie Brown gives us also is an African-American female protagonist, and it connects us to this film history of blaxploitation from the 1970s, which Tarantino himself was really, really inspired by. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So Jackie Brown is one of my favorite films, of course. I encourage you to watch more of Tarantino's films. Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction are both classics that, you know, if you're interested in film studies, if you are going on to study film more, you need to see those films. But Jackie Brown is one of my favorites. A lot of critics see this really as one of Tarantino's best films. So I'm excited that we will watch it together and discuss it more next week. So here's a poster from it. Some basic information. Again, the director Tarantino, you're going to recognize quite a few of the actors. This was made in 1997. It's an American film. Pam Grier is the protagonist. She was an iconic actress in the 70s. I mean, she's been acting for decades, but she really became well known in the 70s for starring in blaxploitation films like Foxy Brown, Coffee, just some really awesome films from that era. Samuel L. Jackson is in this, Robert De Niro, Robert Forster, Michael Keaton, and Bridget Fonda. So a lot of really kind of big name actors are in this film. Tarantino wrote the film, but it's adapted from a novel called Rum Punch by Elmore Leonard. So a very basic synopsis from IMDb. A flight attendant becomes a key figure in a plot between the police and an arms dealer. So that's This is what we would call a log line. So actually part of your final quiz assignment is to come up with your own log lines for the films that we've watched. This is an example of a log line for Jackie Brown. In one sentence, it provides a very brief synopsis of what the film's about. Characters, the characters we'll meet. Jackie Brown, again, is our protagonist. She's a stewardess and a money smuggler. Max Cherry is a bail bondsman. Samuel L. Jackson's character, Ordell, is an arms dealer. Robert De Niro has just been released from prison. He's Ordell's friend. He had served for armed robbery. So we kind of are introduced to them early on. They're illegal arms dealers. Michael Keaton, his character is an ATF agent. Bridget Fonda is Ordell's girlfriend. And then there's another cop who works with Michael Keaton's character. So Roger Ebert's review, he points out that one of the pleasures of Jackie Brown is that everybody in the movie is smart. Whoever is smartest will live. As you watch the film, it's really going to come down to the last minutes of the film before you know who lives, who gets their way, who wins. And that's really one of the cool things about the film, is that because of dramatic irony, because of the different perspectives, because of some of the storytelling techniques, we are kind of figuring things out as it's happening. And that feels good as a viewer. We like that. We like that suspense. The idea that Elmore Leonard elevates the crime novel to a form of sociologic comedy. And then the sense that the characters live in spacious worlds and know a lot of people. And that's satisfying as well, that we feel like our characters are very realistic. They operate in the world, they have connections, they have lives, they have long backstories. So just this kind of sense of our characters feels good and feels different. Ebert points out that Tarantino clearly has great strength with dialogue and plotting and storytelling. And is gifted in casting as well, and you'll see that in the film. He leaves the hardest questions for last, hides his moves, conceals his strategies in plain view, and gives his characters dialogue that is alive, authentic, and spontaneous. So think about the writing. Again, this was adapted from a novel. Think about the writing, the way the story is structured, and the way characters speak, and how the dialogue moves the story forward. So blaxploitation films, I've given you a couple of links. There's one website about blaxploitation films. It's not the most beautifully designed website you've ever seen, but it has great information about the genre of blaxploitation films. So this is in the 1970s, films that often were set in urban areas. They had Black protagonists, but also there were also typically white antagonists, so dealt with issues of urban economic issues, drugs, and kind of who the hero and who the villain were perhaps weren't what we're used to in American cinema. I strongly recommend Coffy and Foxy Brown. They are great films, and they kind of show you what that era of film feels like and looks like, the aesthetic, the music, the again, who's the hero, who's the villain, that challenges in really good ways the possibilities in American cinema. So there are allusions to Greer's career kind of built in this story. It is clear that Tarantino was heavily influenced by blaxploitation. He's talked about that. He's talked about that in interviews, how he was inspired by spaghetti westerns and blaxploitation films, and you can feel that in his filmography. Greer has said, this is in a special feature in the DVD, but Greer has talked about this in interviews, how when she walked in to Tarantino's office to read for the film, all of her posters were up around his office. And she said, "Did you put these up because I was coming over?" And he said, "No, I was going to take them down because you were coming over." He was a big fan. He's talked about how he kind of made this role and saw her in this role. And I think you'll see why. She's remarkable. The first time I saw this film, in the kind of iconic opening sequence of her going to work, I just stopped in my tracks and I was like, I want to see this actress in everything. I want to see everything she's ever done. She's really incredible. Award nominations. So Greer and Jackson were both nominated for Golden Globes, and Robert Forster was nominated for an Academy Award. So we've discussed a little bit over the course of the semester, and it's something that I hope that you're interested in and perhaps read more about. The Academy and the Oscars and their history of who they nominate, who they award, and what stories they also nominate and award. And this was a really kind of interesting year to show the discrepancy between award shows, that the Golden Globes nominated 2 African-American actors and the Academy nominated a white actor. So they're all excellent, but I think this is a really interesting year to kind of contrast who gets recognized by awards shows. Okay. So as I said last week in our class discussion, one of the only silver linings I have found in moving online in the last few weeks is that for our film class, often we are just watching the film. We don't get much time to talk in class. But in this setup, for those of you who are able to come to our Zoom discussion, we have that whole time to just talk about the film that we've watched. So while it's certainly not ideal, and I still would not want to have class like this in the future, I've really been valuing that, and I look forward to hopefully, if you can make the time to come into the Zoom class, to discussing the film more. Yeah, okay. I will see some of you soon. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you have a good week. The countdown is on. We can do this.